Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and I'm really pleased to have in the studio with me Aaron Sherb. He is the Director of Legislative Affairs at Common Cause, commoncause.org. You can tweet him at Aaron Sherb, AARONSCHERB. Aaron, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Thom.
Great to have you with us. So you're, you personally, but Common Cause institutionally is saying, hey, wait a minute. Diplomats should be staying at the Trump Hotel in order to make President Trump happy when they come to ask him for something at the White House. What's wrong with this picture? For example, he's got this myriad of conflicts of interest. You want to share your riff on that with us?
Sure, absolutely. So we're really in an unprecedented situation here in American history that no president, certainly not in modern history, but arguably never has there been a president who's had such great wealth and vast amounts of assets ever to serve as president before. And so Common Cause has called on President-elect Trump to put his assets in a blind trust so that an independent, somebody who's independent, has no financial interest in this, will be able to make the decisions about President Trump's assets, and he will not know who that is and how his decisions in government will affect those assets.
Right. So I understand, and we'll see if they try to pull this out or not, but going back to Scalia and originalism and what did the founders intend, and this is the lodestar that conservatives should always point to, is what the founders did, what the founders believed in, that sort of thing. And I'm hearing that an argument's going to be made that literally from the founding of the Republic until after the Civil War, until the end of the Civil War, the greatest single block of assets in the United States was slaves. They represented more wealth owned by white people. They represented more wealth than any other separate industry, any other business. And that George Washington, for example, if you've been to Mount Vernon, he actually was running an industrial operation there. They were manufacturing steel. They were exporting. He was exporting steel-made goods. They're still doing them at Mount Vernon. You can come see it. He had hundreds of slaves. He served as president. And he maintained slavery, which, he had one of the biggest businesses in the United States. And Thomas Jefferson the same with Monticello. James Madison the same. These are, outside of John Adams, these are our first four presidents, three of our first four presidents. Monroe, I believe, was also a slaveholder. And so they all governed as presidents just fine, and they kept their businesses. And their businesses were large and substantial businesses in early America, relative to, the average wealth of the United States. I mean, they were not that different than, maybe not quite as big as Donald Trump, but not that different than, your average, say, multimillionaire in today's dollars. What would your response be?
So I guess the late 1700s and early 1800s, the early points in American history, are vastly different than now. And there was no such thing as a blind trust that existed in the early parts of our country. Our financial and political world is much more complicated now than it certainly was in the founding of our country.
Which is why none of this is in the Constitution. But these laws, these conflict of interest laws, by and large, most of them just came about since the Nixon scandals. I mean, they're relatively recent.
That's correct.
And the argument is going to be made, we need to take this to the Supreme Court. This recent stuff about all this conflict of interest, this does not comport with original intent.
So, yeah, the Ethics in Government Act of 1978 specifically didn't include the president and vice president. It includes all other federal office holders. They have to divest themselves.
So Trump can arguably get away with this without even having to change the law.
That's correct. It's been culture, and all modern American presidents have put their assets in a blind trust or something equivalent where they're independent of.
Nixon bought a couple of houses, for example.
Sure. And so we have examples. It's more kind of ingrained in culture of U.S. politics than in law. But this is unprecedented, though, in modern U.S. history, what President-elect Trump is attempting to do. And just the fact that he's saying it's going to be independent by giving it to his children, we think is neither blind nor trustworthy.
Right. Well said. But that said, Common Cause, this show, the people listening, people watching, other than bringing moral suasion to this, moral pressure to this, what can be done?
I think having, as we encourage, having thousands and many cases millions of Americans trying to reach out to their members of Congress to put pressure on them to update the Ethics in Government Act. President-elect Trump has made kind of the drain the swamp mantra a big part of his campaign. Vice President-elect Trump, Pence over the weekend said that ethics reform will in fact be something that they push in the 115th Congress. And so we want to see his actions kind of stand up to what he's saying and what he said on the campaign. So Common Cause and other groups will be pushing for ethics reform to include some sort of blind trust provision in any sort of ethics package.
So you're hoping that the Republican Congress will pass a law that will make life difficult for President Trump. Do you have any expectation that that's actually going to happen?
I'm a Chicago Cubs fan, so I'm an eternal optimist.
I love it.
But we think at least trying to have that debate and have Congress debate the issue and have people talking about the conflicts of interest that President-elect Trump has will be a positive thing.
There's no federal citizens initiative mechanism.
That's correct.
So really the only chance here is either Trump says, okay, I'll do what's right just because it's right, which it kind of flies in the face of his entire life and business history, and certainly flies in the face of the way that the Republican Party conducts itself, or at least has since the Reagan administration. Or that the Republicans will pass a law because it's the right thing. Is there anything else that we can do? I mean, we can, I think I'm guessing the Democrats are going to be yelling and screaming about this, the media perhaps. But, does Common Cause have a specific strategy?
Well, I think as we see, similar to what happened with the Stock Act in 2012, when there's some sort of kind of shock value or some sort of crisis or scandal that really kind of catalyzes change among the call for change among the electorate. I think
the Stock Act.
So there's kind of insider trading. So there's a 60 Minutes piece that kind of exposed insider trading that was allegedly going on that members of Congress are doing.
Congress, yeah.
And then there was a bill that had been languishing for a number of years that had very few co-sponsors. And then there's a 60 Minutes piece. Within about a week or two, this bill had several hundred co-sponsors, and there was kind of a public outcry of calling Congress to kind of.
So you think that mobilizing the public might put enough pressure on Republican legislators that at least a critical threshold of them will do the right thing?
That's what we're hoping. And just given that President-elect Trump ran on such a kind of drain the swamp ethics mantra, we think that that's the best chance.
Paul Ryan has the power to absolutely block any legislation in the House. It has to go through his office before it comes to the floor for a vote. Mitch McConnell has a similar power in the Senate. Have we heard anything from either of them about any of this?
Paul Ryan's office had when they were discussing some House rules changes for the beginning of 2017, they, I think, are open to certain proposals. And just given the fact that Vice President-elect Pence used to serve in the House, the fact that he'll likely be championing some of President-elect Trump's reforms through Congress, we think is a...
Reforms?
Well,
it's not the word I'd use.
Reform ideas.
Yeah, stripping of America is, but well, anyway.
Well, specifically for lobbyist reforms and some of the
thing. Yeah, he's actually said, we need to drain the swamp. We need to stop the revolving door. Good luck with that, but.
Yeah, a lot of that has to be done through congressional action, but there are certain steps that could be taken through executive action. For example, we're encouraging the Trump administration to continue President Obama's executive order requiring lobbyists.
Real quickly, we just have like 20 seconds left. Is there anything that Obama could do right now about this, or any presidential order could just be overturned by Trump, right?
Yeah, at this point, any executive order could be overturned by the next administration.
All right. Aaron Sherb, Director of Legislative Affairs at Common Cause, commoncause.org. Thank you, Aaron.
Thanks very much for having me, Thom.
Great having you with us.